The abandoned starship floated in silence at the edge of the sector. Its metal hull carried scars from battles long forgotten, and its lights had died long ago. Only the faint hum of emergency systems whispered through the corridors. Daniel, a human explorer, guided his small craft close and docked with care. For weeks he had searched the outer rim for signs of salvage or survivors, and now this derelict vessel promised both danger and mystery. He stepped through the docking seal, his boots echoing against cold steel. The smell of stale air filled his helmet as he pulled it free. It was the kind of silence that pressed heavy against the chest, a silence that suggested the ship itself was holding its breath. Daniel moved slowly, shining his light across walls marked with strange alien symbols. He had studied enough languages to know this script belonged to no common faction. That fact alone sparked both excitement and unease. The ship seemed deserted, yet there were signs of struggle. Panels had been ripped open. Crates lay scattered as if people had fled in haste. He passed through one chamber after another, noting scorch marks from energy weapons. Whoever had fought here had left in a hurry, or had not left at all. Still, there were no bodies, no bones, no signs of the crew, only the emptiness. Daniel's light flickered over a sealed door at the end of a corridor. Unlike the others, it bore heavy locks reinforced with alien alloys. Someone had wanted this door to remain closed, yet his scanner picked up faint life signs beyond it. His heart quickened. Against his better judgment, he began working on the locks. The final bolt slid aside with a grinding hiss. The door creaked open, and cold air rushed out like a sigh of relief. He stepped inside and froze. In the shadows of the hold, a figure sat slumped against the far wall. Chains of dark metal bound her wrists and ankles, stretching to hooks drilled deep into the floor. She was thin, her skin pale under the dim emergency light, her hair tangled and falling across her face. She looked almost human, but her eyes glowed faintly with a strange hue that no human carried. Daniel's first instinct was pity. Whoever she was, she had been left here to die. He took a cautious step forward, but the woman stirred. Her head lifted slowly, and those glowing eyes fixed on him. "Don't," she whispered, her voice cracked yet firm. "Don't free me." Daniel stopped, startled not only by her words but by the weight behind them. They carried fear not of him but of herself. He opened his mouth to answer, but she continued before he could speak. "Only the chains keep the monster inside." The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence of the ship. Daniel frowned, unsure if she was delusional or telling them truth. He scanned the chains with his wrist device. The metal was not of any design he recognized. It shimmered faintly, as if alive with energy, pulsing against his scanner. Whoever had built these restraints had meant for them to hold something powerful. Still, she was alive, and leaving her here seemed unthinkable. He crouched a few steps away, keeping his distance but showing his hands to prove he meant no harm. "My name is Daniel," he said gently. "I found your ship drifting. I'm here to help. What's your name?" She hesitated, her lips trembling as if saying her name might summon something she wished to keep buried. At last she whispered, "Lyra." Daniel nodded, speaking softly. "Lyra, you don't look like a monster. You look like someone who has suffered. Whoever did this to you, you don't understand," she interrupted, her voice sharp though weak. "These chains are not cruelty, they are mercy." Her words unsettled him, but he could not turn away. He studied her closer. She had bruises along her arms where the chains had bitten deep into her skin. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Yet beneath her weakness, there was an air of strength, a coiled energy barely contained. "Let me at least give you water," Daniel offered. He pulled a flask from his belt and placed it on the floor between them. He pushed it gently within her reach. She stared at it for a long moment before dragging it toward her with trembling hands. She drank in small sips as if afraid that even water might unleash something within her. Daniel watched in silence, his thoughts racing. Who was she? What monster did she speak of? And why would anyone chain her deep in the hold of a dying ship and leave her there? When she finished drinking, she looked at him again, her eyes softer now. "You should leave," she said, "before it wakes." "What wakes?" Daniel asked carefully. "The thing inside me," she replied, voice barely above a breath. "It is stronger than me. It is hunger, fire, storm. My people feared it. They bound me with these chains because only they could contain it. Without them, I would not be me." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to dismiss it as madness, the result of isolation and suffering. Yet something in her tone made him believe. She was not lying to frighten him. She was warning him because she truly feared what might happen. But Daniel was human, and humans had a way of walking toward danger when others fled. "Maybe there's another way," he said softly. "Maybe the chains aren't the answer. Maybe you can control it." Her eyes flashed, and for a moment her face hardened as if she carried centuries of sorrow. "You don't know what you're saying. No one can control it." Silence filled the hold once more, broken only by the faint hum of the chains. Daniel sat down across from her, still keeping a respectful distance. He decided he would not leave. Yet, if she truly was dangerous, then leaving her chained in the dark would not solve anything. And if she was not, then she deserved freedom, not abandonment. Hours seemed to pass in quiet unease. Lyra spoke little, but Daniel noticed how she watched him, her fear mingling with something else, curiosity. He realized she had likely not seen another living face in months, maybe longer. The loneliness in her eyes was as deep as the void outside the ship. At one point the vessel groaned, metal straining under the stress of drifting through space. The sound echoed like a beast's growl. Lyra flinched, pulling hard against her chains as if fearing they might break. Daniel instinctively rose to calm her, but stopped when he saw the faint glow along the metal brighten. The chains pulsed as though feeding off her fear, tightening their hold. Lyra gasped and forced herself still, her breath ragged. "You see?" she whispered, trembling. "It waits for weakness, it waits for fear, the chains know it." Daniel's chest tightened. He had never seen restraints that responded to emotion. Whatever technology bound her was older and stranger than anything he knew. He wanted to speak again, to argue that no one was beyond saving. But the words caught in his throat. He realized this was no simple rescue. This was a crossroads. If he freed her, he might unleash something terrible. If he left her, he might condemn an innocent soul to die alone in the dark. The hold felt colder now, the shadows heavier. Lyra lowered her head, hiding her face behind her tangled hair. Yet Daniel could still hear her soft whisper, like a prayer, not meant for him but for herself. "Please don't free me." Daniel stood in silence, his heart torn. He had come searching for survivors, but what he had found was a secret the galaxy had buried. As he stared at the chains glowing faintly in the darkness, he wondered if he had just stepped into a story far larger than his own. And in that quiet hold, as the derelict drifted through endless space, he knew one truth. This was only the beginning. Daniel could not sleep. Even after he returned to his small exploration craft and sealed the airlock, the memory of Lyra's glowing eyes and trembling voice echoed in his mind. He had crossed forgotten sectors, scavenged broken ships, and met survivors who carried scars of war. But never had he heard words like hers. She was not begging for freedom. She was begging for the chains to remain. That was something his heart could not ignore. He sat at his console, staring at the blinking lights of his scanner. The derelict alien vessel floated beside him, broken and silent, like a ghost in the void. His hands moved over the controls as if ready to depart, but he could not bring himself to leave. If he flew away now, Lyra would fade into darkness, her voice lost forever. He did not know whether she was truly a danger or simply a victim of cruel superstition. But he knew one thing: he could not abandon her. Daniel gathered supplies: water, packs, protein rations, a portable lamp, and a small med kit. He told himself he would not break her chains, not yet, but he could at least give her comfort, speak with her, and learn the truth of her story. His shuttle door hissed open, and once more he stepped into the derelict. The silence inside greeted him like a shroud. As he made his way back to the hold, he felt the weight of the ship pressing down. Every corridor was filled with dust, every chamber scarred with forgotten battles. He thought of the crew who had chained her there. Were they afraid of her? Or had they meant to protect her from others who wanted her power? The questions gnawed at him as he walked. When the door to the hold slid open again, Lyra raised her head slowly. Her glowing eyes flickered faintly in the dark. She seemed weaker than before, her shoulders slumping under the weight of the chains. "You came back," she said, her voice dry but tinged with something that sounded like surprise. Daniel set the lamp on the ground, bathing the chamber in soft, steady light. "Of course I came back," he replied. "I couldn't leave you here alone." Her lips curved into a small, sad smile. "You should have. It would have been safer for you." Ignoring her warning, Daniel knelt and placed the supplies before her. He opened the water pack and pressed it into her hands. This time she did not hesitate. She drank deeply, as though the water carried life itself. When she finished, Daniel gave her a ration bar. She chewed slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. "Why do you do this?" she asked after a long silence. "You owe me nothing. You don't even know what I am." Daniel leaned back, crossing his arms. "Maybe I don't, but I know what it means to see someone suffering, and I know what it means to feel alone. No one deserves to be abandoned." Her eyes softened, though her chains rattled faintly as she shifted. "Humans," she whispered, "always believing hearts are stronger than fear. I don't understand it." "You don't have to," Daniel said gently. "Just eat. Just talk. Tell me what happened here." For a long time she was silent. Her eyes drifted to the chains, glowing faintly as if listening to her thoughts. Finally, she spoke in a voice that trembled with memory. "My people were born with a gift," she began, "a light inside. It was meant to protect us, to shield our worlds from harm. But war twisted it. Fear turned it into something else. That light became fire, that fire became hunger. We did not control it anymore. It controlled us." Daniel leaned closer, listening intently. Her words painted pictures of a civilization both beautiful and tragic. "And you?" he asked. "What happened to you?" She closed her eyes. "I carried more of it than the others. Too much. They said it was destiny. But when it awoke, it nearly consumed me. My people tried to help, but I destroyed more than I saved. At last, they forged these chains. Metal alive with ancient power. They said it was the only way to silence the storm inside me." Daniel felt the hairs rise on his neck. "So your people put you here?" She shook her head. "No, not them. The ones who captured us. Raiders, scavengers, soldiers from the wars that followed. They found me chained, and instead of freeing me, they sought to use me. They wanted to turn the monster into a weapon. But the storm inside does not serve masters. It killed them, all of them. And then the ship drifted, empty but for me." Her voice broke at the last word, and she turned her face away. Daniel saw tears glisten in the corner of her glowing eyes. She had carried this pain alone, sealed in the dark, for longer than he could imagine. "You're not a monster," Daniel said softly. "You're someone who has suffered." Her laugh was bitter. "That is what they all said before they feared me, before they chained me." Daniel reached out but stopped himself, letting his hand fall. He wanted to break her chains, but he remembered her warning. Perhaps trust had to grow slowly, one word at a time. "I don't believe fear should decide who you are," he said. "Chains may hold back your strength, but they also hold back your life. You deserve more than this." Her eyes flickered with conflict. For the first time, Daniel saw not only fear, but hope hiding behind her sorrow. She opened her mouth to speak, but the ship itself interrupted. A deep clang rang through the hull. Daniel stiffened, his hand instinctively reaching for the sidearm at his belt. The sound came again, echoing closer, followed by a faint hiss of systems struggling to life. Lyra's expression darkened. "They are here," she whispered. Daniel turned sharply. "Who?" "Raiders," she said. Her chains rattled as she pulled against them. "They return sometimes. They smell weakness. They search for me." Daniel cursed under his breath. He had left his craft docked to the side of the derelict. If raiders had spotted the signal, they would board soon. He knew what scavengers did to ships like this. Strip them for parts, kill whoever stood in the way. He glanced back at Lyra. "I'll protect you," he promised. Her eyes widened, panic flashing in their glow. "No. If you fight, if they hurt me, it will wake. You don't understand." But Daniel was already moving. He pulled his sidearm free, checking the power cell. He crouched near the door, listening as the sound of boots echoed through the corridor. The raiders were close. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. The door slid open and shadow spilled into the hold. Armed figures stepped inside, their weapons gleaming in the lamplight. They froze when they saw Lyra bound in chains, and Daniel standing before her like a guardian. Well, one of them sneered. "Looks like someone beat us to the prize." Daniel raised his weapon. "Turn back. She's not yours." The raiders laughed, spreading out, their guns lifting. "Not yours either, human. Move aside and maybe we'll let you live." Behind him, Lyra gasped, her chains glowing brighter, trembling as if sensing her fear. Daniel glanced back and saw her struggling to remain calm. Her eyes shut tight, her lips whispering silent words. The chains pulsed in rhythm with her trembling, alive with strange energy. He turned forward again, heart racing. He knew he could not defeat all of them, but he also knew he would not let them take her. "Last warning," he said firmly. "Leave, now." The raiders raised their weapons. The hold filled with the hiss of charging blasters, and in that instant, Daniel realized he was standing at the edge of something far greater than survival. He was standing at the edge of a storm that had been chained for too long. The chains rattled violently behind him, glowing brighter as if answering the call of danger. The air in the hold thickened with tension as the raiders leveled their weapons. Daniel stood firm, sidearm raised, his breath steady though his pulse pounded like drums in his chest. Behind him the chains rattled, glowing faintly as if alive. He could hear Lyra's quick, uneven breaths, the sound of someone holding back a storm. The leader of the raiders stepped forward. His armor was patched together from scraps, his face hidden behind a cracked visor. "Step aside, human. Whatever that thing is, she's worth more than your life. You don't want to die for her." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You're not taking her." A harsh laugh rang through the chamber. "Then you'll die first." The first shot came quick, a bolt of energy cutting across the hold. Daniel ducked and fired back, his blast striking a raider's shoulder and sending him spinning to the ground. Chaos erupted. Beams of light filled the room, sizzling against the walls. Daniel rolled behind a broken crate, returning fire with precision. He had been in tight corners before, but never with stakes like this. Every shot shook the air, and every moment of violence pushed Lyra closer to the edge. Daniel could feel it. Her chains trembled, humming like angry instruments. The glow along. The metal brightened, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Stop!" she cried out, her voice breaking with strain. "Don't make me, please." But the raiders didn't hear, or didn't care. They advanced, spreading out in the chamber. Daniel fought hard, hitting two more with careful shots, but there were too many. A blast struck the crate beside him, sending sparks flying. He ducked lower, teeth clenched. Behind him, he heard a sound that chilled him more than enemy fire. It was the sharp crack of breaking metal. The chains. He risked a glance back. Lyra's body shook violently, her eyes glowing brighter than before, her arms straining against the restraints. Cracks spread through the dark metal, glowing lines of light that looked alive. The chains were failing. "Daniel!" she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You have to leave. If they break, I won't be me anymore. Daniel's heart twisted. He wanted to protect her, to believe in her, but the fear in her voice was real. Still, he couldn't abandon her. Not now. Not ever. Hold on, he shouted. I'll end this. He popped out of cover and fired 3 shots in quick succession. 2 raiders fell, their weapons clattering to the floor. The third aimed at him, but before the shot could land, a strange blast of energy surged across the chamber. Daniel froze, watching in shock. It hadn't come from him. It had come from her. Lyra screamed as the chains split, a flare of blinding light erupting from her body. The raiders stumbled back, shielding their eyes. The remaining links fought to hold, glowing so brightly they looked ready to shatter. Energy surged through the chamber, a wave of power that knocked the raiders against the walls. Daniel stared, his mind torn between awe and terror. Her body glowed faintly, her hair lifting as if stirred by an invisible storm. Her eyes burned like twin suns, and her voice deepened, layered with echoes that did not belong to her alone. I warned you, she whispered, though the whisper was as loud as thunder. The chains screamed under the force, splitting further. Sparks of alien energy spilled into the air, swirling around her like fireflies of doom. Daniel could see it, the monster she had spoken of. It was not a beast of flesh, but a force within her, raw and untamed, pressing to break free. The raiders panicked. One shouted to retreat, but another raised his weapon and fired desperately at Lyra. The blast struck her chest, but instead of piercing her, it was swallowed by the glow. The energy bent around her body and shot back, slamming the raider to the ground. Daniel ran forward, firing his last shots to cover her. He struck 2 more enemies, but the final raider charged at him with a blade. Daniel barely blocked with his sidearm, stumbling back as sparks flew. The man swung again, forcing Daniel against the wall, and then the raider froze, eyes wide with horror. Daniel looked up just in time to see Lyra's chains finally snap. The sound was like shattering glass and breaking thunder at once. The energy released shook the chamber, a blast of light throwing everyone to the ground. Daniel shielded his face, the shockwave pressing against his chest. When he lowered his arm, he saw her. Lyra stood free, her wrists no longer bound. The last fragments of chains lay scattered at her feet, glowing faintly before fading into ash. Her entire body shimmered with energy, as though a second form, larger, darker, wilder, stood within her. Her glowing eyes turned toward the raiders, and for a moment Daniel thought he saw flames behind them. The raiders screamed in terror. One tried to crawl away, but with a single flick of her hand, the air around him shimmered, and he was hurled, back like a toy. The others followed, tossed aside by invisible force. Their weapons shattered, their voices turned to cries of fear. "Lyra!" Daniel shouted. "Stop! You don't have to." But she didn't hear him, or perhaps she couldn't. The storm had her now, her voice echoed through the chamber, layered with power. "They will not take me again." Energy surged from her body, slamming into the walls, leaving scorch marks in its wake. The derelict ship groaned, its structure trembling as though it feared her power. Daniel braced himself, trying to move closer, but every step was like walking into a hurricane. And yet, amidst the chaos, he saw something: her tears. Even as the storm raged around her, her face twisted with pain, with the desperate struggle to hold back. She was fighting herself, clawing against the monster within. Daniel's heart ached. He had seen soldiers break under pressure, seen friends consumed by war, but this was different. She wasn't a danger by choice. She was a prisoner of her own power. Gathering his strength, he pushed forward through the energy. His boots slid across the floor, his body trembling with the effort, but he refused to stop. He reached her, standing just before her glowing form. "Lyra!" he shouted above the storm. "You're stronger than this. You are not the monster. You are you." Her eyes flicked to him. For a moment the glow faltered. The storm raged, but her hands lowered slightly, trembling. I can't," she whispered, her voice breaking through the layers. "I can't stop it." "You don't have to stop it alone." Daniel yelled, "I'm here, I'll stand with you, you're not alone anymore." The words pierced the storm like a blade. Lyra's body shook, the glow faltering further. Her tears fell freely now, cutting through the light on her cheeks. Slowly, painfully, she drew the energy inward, forcing the storm to shrink. The glowing form around her faded, bit by bit, until, at last, the hurricane of power dimmed. She collapsed to her knees, the last sparks of energy flickering out. Daniel caught her before she fell, holding her close. Her body trembled violently, her breath shallow. But she was alive. The raiders lay scattered, groaning and broken, too terrified to move. Daniel didn't care about them. His eyes were only on her. "You did it," he whispered. "You held it back." Her voice cracked, barely a breath. "Because you believed." Daniel tightened his hold, his heart pounding with relief. He didn't know what the future held. The chains were gone. The monster inside was real. But in that moment, he knew one thing. She was not lost. And as the derelict ship drifted silently, once more Daniel realized their story had only just begun. The derelict ship drifted in silence after the storm of battle. The raiders had fled or lay broken, their courage shattered by the sight of Lyra's unleashed power. The chamber still bore the scars, walls scorched black, metal twisted, and fragments of the chains scattered like dead embers across the floor. Daniel sat beside Lyra, who lay weak in his arms. Her glow had faded, leaving only exhaustion in its place. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. He could feel her trembling, as though her body was still fighting to contain what had been released. When she finally opened her eyes, her voice was a whisper. "You should have left me." Daniel shook his head firmly. "I couldn't. You're not alone anymore." Her lips curved into a faint smile, sad yet warm. "You don't understand what you've done. The chains are gone. I can't. Promise I'll always hold it back." "Then I'll help you hold it," Daniel said simply. She stared at him in silence, as though she had never heard such words before. Her glowing eyes softened, and for a moment she seemed less like a prisoner of her own power and more like the person she truly was. Just a woman, tired and afraid, longing to be free. After giving her water and letting her rest, Daniel began, searching the chamber for answers. Among the debris he found fragments of the alien technology that had once held her. The chains had been more than metal. They pulsed faintly with energy, etched with runes of a language older than any he knew. He gathered the fragments, hoping they might reveal clues. Lyra watched him quietly. At last, she spoke. "Those chains were forged by my people, long before the wars. They were not made to punish me, but to protect the worlds around me. My kind believed in balance. Power must serve, not rule. But I carried too much of it. They feared what I might become." Daniel turned to her. "So they bound you?" She nodded slowly. "They believed chains were the only way. I was meant to be their guardian. But instead, I became their burden. When the wars came, raiders found me. They tried to turn me into a weapon, and when they failed, they abandoned me here." Her voice cracked at the memory. Daniel's chest tightened. He could hear the weight of centuries in her words, the sorrow of a life spent as both treasure and curse. "You're not a burden," Daniel said firmly. "You're alive. That means you still have a choice." Her eyes widened, as if the idea itself was foreign. "A choice?" "Yes," Daniel said. "You can decide who you want to be, not the chains, not the raiders. You." Lyra lowered her gaze. Her fingers dug into her knees as though afraid of herself. "And if I choose wrong? If I fail to control it?" Daniel placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Then I'll stand with you. If the storm rises, I'll help you face it. You're not alone anymore, Lyra. Not as long as I'm here." For a long time she did not speak, but the trembling in her hands lessened and her shoulders eased. She gave the faintest nod, as though daring herself to believe his words. The quiet moment was broken by the deep rumble of engines outside the derelict. Daniel stiffened, rushing to the viewport. His stomach dropped. A warship loomed in the distance, far larger and far more dangerous than the scavenger craft they had fought. Its hull gleamed with fresh armor, its cannons bristling with power. A banner stretched across its side, the mark of a ruthless faction known for hunting rare technologies. "They're here for me," Lyra whispered, her voice filled with dread. Daniel turned. "How do you know?" "Because they always come," she said. "My power is not a secret. It calls to those who want to use it. They will not stop until they have me." Daniel's mind raced. His shuttle was too small to outrun such a warship. Fighting them head-on was suicide. Yet if they stayed, the warship would tear the derelict apart. He looked back at Lyra. She sat hunched against the wall, her hands pressed to her chest, fear shining in her eyes. "I won't let them take you," Daniel said. Her gaze snapped to his, sharp with panic. "No, you don't understand. If they force me to fight, I'll lose control. The storm will burn everything. I'll destroy you too." Daniel crouched before her, his voice calm but firm. "Then we don't give them that choice. You're not their weapon. You're not their prisoner. You're free now." Her breath caught. "Free." The word lingered in the air like a fragile flame. Daniel could see how much it frightened her, but also how much she longed for it. The warship drew closer, its engines rumbling through the void. Daniel knew time was running out. He activated his wrist scanner, searching the derelict for anything useful. His screen flickered with readings of the ship's core, damaged, unstable, but still humming with torment energy. An idea sparked in his mind. Dangerous, maybe foolish, but it was all they had. "Lyra," he said quickly, "this ship still has power in its heart. If we overload it, we could make it explode. The blast would force the warship to retreat, maybe even damage it. But we'd need a shield, something to survive the blast." Her eyes widened. "You mean me?" Daniel nodded. "You can do it. I've seen your strength. You can shape it not as a weapon, but as protection, not to destroy, but to save." Her face twisted with doubt. "What if I can't? What if the storm consumes me?" Daniel gripped her hand, steady and strong. "Then I'll be with you. If you fall, I fall too. But I believe in you, Lyra. I believe you're stronger than the storm." Tears welled in her eyes. She searched his face, looking for fear, for hesitation, but found none. Only trust. Slowly, she nodded. "Then we try." Together they made their way to the engine chamber. The corridors groaned as they walked, as though the ship itself knew its end was near. Daniel worked quickly, setting charges and rerouting the unstable core. Sweat clung to his forehead as alarms blared. Lyra stood at his side, her body trembling with energy she tried to hold in check. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, practicing control. Her glow flickered softly, steadying with each breath. "When," Daniel finished, he turned to her. "Once I trigger the overload, there'll be no going back. The blast will tear this ship apart." She nodded, lifting her hands. "Then I will shield us. I will try." The warship loomed outside now. Close, enough that its cannons glowed with charging fire. A voice crackled through the derelict's comms, sharp and cold. "Surrender the weapon or be destroyed." Daniel looked at Lyra. "You ready?" Her eyes glowed brighter, fierce with determination. "Yes." He triggered the overload. The ship's core roared, light spilling through the chamber as alarms screamed. The warship fired, but before the blast could hit, Lyra raised her hands. A dome of shimmering energy erupted around them, bending the incoming fire into harmless sparks. Daniel grabbed her shoulder. "Hold it, Lyra, just a little longer." The core reached its peak. With a thunderous crack, the derelict exploded outward, a sun blooming in the void. The warship reeled, its cannons shattered, its hull burning from the shockwave. Inside the shield, Daniel shielded his face, the heat pressing against them. But Lyra stood firm, her glow steady, her voice trembling, with effort yet unbroken. She held the storm, not as destruction but as protection. When the blast finally faded, silence returned. The warship limped away, engines flickering, retreating into the distance. Lyra collapsed, falling into Daniel's arms, her glow dimming but not gone. Her body shook with exhaustion, yet she was alive. "You did it," Daniel whispered, holding her close. "You saved us." Her eyes fluttered open. "No, we did it. Together." For the first time, her voice carried no fear of the storm inside her. Only hope. And Daniel knew then that the choice had been made. Not chains. Not fear. Trust. The wreckage of the derelict ship drifted in glowing fragments, fading slowly into the darkness of space. What had once been a prison was now gone, erased in fire and light. Daniel's shuttle, small and fragile compared to the destroyed warship, clung to life, its engines humming softly as it pulled away from the field of debris. Inside, the air was thick with silence, broken only by the faint sound of Lyra's breathing. She lay on the narrow bunk, her body weak from the effort of shielding them both from the blast. Sweat beaded her forehead, and her hands trembled, but her glow, gentle and steady, remained. Daniel sat beside her, watching with quiet relief as she stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, faint light flickering in them. She looked at him and managed a tired smile. "You stayed." Daniel chuckled softly, though his voice was heavy with exhaustion. "I told you I wouldn't leave." Her gaze softened. "Most would have. Most did." He shook his head. "Then, they weren't the right ones." For a long while they sat in silence, the stars drifting past the viewport like a sea of endless light. Lyra's breathing steadied, and color returned to her face. Daniel offered her water and she drank slowly, each sip reviving her strength. Finally she spoke, her voice low but firm. "Do you understand what this means, Daniel? The chains are gone. The storm inside me is free. I can't go back to what I was. There is no safety now." Daniel met her eyes without hesitation. "You're wrong. There is safety. It's here, with me." Her eyes widened slightly. "You believe that? Even after what you saw?" "I saw you protect me. Protect both of us," Daniel said. "That wasn't a monster. That was you, choosing who you want to be." Her lips trembled, as though holding back tears. She turned her face away, staring out at the stars. "No one has ever said that to me. Not once. To everyone else, I was only danger. A weapon to fear or use. Never just me." Daniel leaned closer, his voice steady. "Then let this be the first time. You're not chains. You're not a weapon. You're Lyra, and you're free to decide what that means." The words struck her deeply. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, as though letting herself believe them piece by piece. For the first time since he found her, the glow in her eyes softened not with fear but with peace. Hours passed. Daniel repaired what he could of the shuttle, while Lyra regained her strength. They shared quiet conversations, pieces of her past revealed like fragments of a broken mirror. She told him of her people, once noble guardians who had fallen when their power grew too great. She told him of the centuries she had spent chained, listening to the whispers of the storm inside her. And he told her of humanity, of a world far away, full of chaos and kindness, of flaws and beauty. "You humans," she said softly one evening. "You carry no chains, yet you bear storms of your own. Fear, anger, ambition. And still you find ways to rise above them." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's what makes us human. We fall, we rise, and sometimes we help each other stand." Her eyes lingered on him, glowing gently in the dim light. "Perhaps that is why the storm listened to you. Perhaps it heard your faith." The words warmed Daniel more than he could admit. But peace could not last forever. 3 days later, the scanners lit up with signals. The warship they had damaged was not gone. It had returned, repaired, and reinforced, bringing allies with it. A fleet of hunters now spread across the sector, searching for the one they called the living weapon. Daniel cursed under his breath. "They're not going to stop." Lyra stood beside him, her glow steady but her face grave. "They will," Never stop, not until I am theirs or I am gone. Daniel turned sharply. No, don't say that, there's another way. She shook her head slowly. Daniel, you don't understand. The storm inside me, it calls to them. They feel it like blood in the water. They'll keep coming no matter where we run. Then we don't run, Daniel said firmly. We make them see, not a monster, not a weapon, you. Her eyes widened. How? By standing, Daniel replied. By showing them you're not what they think you are. By fighting not with chains but with choice. For a long moment she stared at him, torn between fear and hope. Finally she nodded. They prepared together. Daniel adjusted the shuttles, systems turning its small engines into traps of light and distraction. Lyra centered herself, practicing control, her glow rising and falling like calm waves instead of raging storms. When the fleet finally found them, space lit up with enemy. Fire. The shuttle darted between blasts, weaving through explosions. Daniel piloted with steady hands, but he knew they could not outrun forever. Now, Lyra, he called. She stepped forward, standing tall in the center of the shuttle. Her eyes blazed, her hair lifted as the storm awoke. But this time she did not fight it. She embraced it, not as a curse, but as part of herself. The glow spread outward, surrounding the shuttle in a dome of radiant light. Enemy blasts struck, but instead of feeding the storm, they bent away harmlessly. The fleet pressed closer, determined to capture their prize. Lyra raised her hands and the light grew brighter. Her voice echoed, steady and strong. I am not your weapon, I am not your monster, I am free. The storm answered, but not with chaos, with harmony. The energy burst outward, not destroying the ships, but disabling them. Engines faltered, weapons died, and the fleet drifted helpless in the void. Daniel stared in awe. She had done it, not with chains, not with fear, but with choice. When the glow faded, Lyra collapsed into his arms, exhausted, but smiling. Her eyes shone with tears. I controlled it, I chose. Daniel held her close, his voice gentle. I told you. You're stronger than the storm. Silence returned to space. The fleet, powerless, drifted away, unwilling to challenge her, again. Later, as the shuttle moved toward safer stars, Lyra sat beside Daniel, her hand resting lightly on his. What now? She asked softly. Daniel looked out at the endless horizon. Now we make a life. Not chains, not prisons, just choices. Together. Her lips curved into a true smile, radiant and free. Together. And as the stars stretched, before them the storm inside her settled, no longer a monster, but a part of her she had finally claimed. For in the end it was not chains that saved her. It was trust, and the simple truth of a human who refused to leave her behind.